right, good morning, everybody. We are live. Welcome to CertiPay's Coffee Break with the HR team. We are so glad you're joining us for these coffee breaks. Such great information and topics that affect all of us. So it's been great to have you guys on these every other Thursday, and we hope you continue to join us. I am your host, Rachel Camella, and I'm here with our moderator, Cindy Merkel, from our HR team, and I actually see quite a few members of our HR team on board with us today. So cheers, everybody. I am drinking a delicious Burundi from Temple Coffee out in California. I love this stuff. Cindy, you have your regular?
Actually, I made my own coffee today. It's still Starbucks espresso roast, but I didn't go get it, and it doesn't have 2 extra
Yay.
shots.
Oh, good. I'm so excited. Well, I hope everybody has a delicious cup of coffee to enjoy while we talk about this very important subject, the minimum wage increase. So we know that Florida already has a timeline for these increases, but this is something that could be going, that could easily be a federal issue. Hey guys, just a reminder, please mute your phones when you join in. It helps to keep the background noise down. So we anticipate some federal changes with minimum wage as we move through. So don't be surprised if your state also has some changes. So what we're going to talk about today is the timeline for the Florida changes and what those look like. But again, you know, you may have, if you're from a different state today, take this information. It's all very useful and good information because your state may not be too far behind. We're going to talk about some of the pros and cons, additional benefits, and then what you can do. We've got a nice 4-step plan to prepare. All right, so everybody good? So let's just take a quick snapshot of this timeline. Our current minimum wage in Florida is $8.65. This is going to go up to $10 an hour September 30th. So that is not October 1st. Make sure you catch that extra day there. September 30th is the actual first day of the change. Now I put in this $15 change for federal contractors because this in our timeline falls in January of 2022. So in case you have any federal contractors or somebody you pay on an independent contract basis through federal contractors, be aware of that $15 change. This went through as an executive order earlier this month. So something to keep your eye on in terms of this timeline. And then we're going to go September 30th of 2022, we're going to go $11 and then $1 an hour per year until we get to 2026. And then in 2027, it will fall into cost of living annual inflation adjustments after that. And so initially you think, gosh, it's a lot. It's so quickly, you're going up $5. And if we really looked at a cost of living adjustment, we would be looking at about a $23 an hour minimum wage. So getting gradually pushed up to the 15 number is not all that bad based on cost of living. So just a little bit of perspective there. So let's talk about some of the pros. When a business owner thinks of a minimum wage increase, automatically all the negatives go through your mind. I know how that is. You think your payroll and you have to adjust everybody and you have all these negatives, but really there are a ton of pros. So first of all, what we historically see when there's a wage increase there is a boost to the economy. So what happens is people have more money. And they are going to spend it. So they're going to buy more goods and services. They've got money in their pocket that they didn't have before, so now they're going to spend it. So the first thing that we could see is an actual boost to the economy. And then along the same lines, because you've got people buying more things, getting more services, the economy gets that stimulation by this purchasing power, and the demand actually increases. So now you may need to add some positions. We may see more jobs available and more job openings occurring because of the need. So there's more going on. The economy is stimulated and things are happening. And the other thing, it's really a big help to families and their family members. So your employees and their family members, because now they've got that extra money. You've got, you make the ends meet, and now you have the money to buy your second grader the glasses that she needs, or you maybe just buy a pair of school shoes and now you can buy school shoes and tennis shoes. So there's some extra money that is going to go through these families, your employees' families, and things that they need. So you're really doing things that help and that make a difference and that create a little bit of stimulation that gives us all a boost. Good so far?
I do have a question. I don't know if you want me to wait till the end or.
Is it Angie's question?
It is.
Yeah, so that increase that we're talking about, the executive order applies to federal contractors who are paid on an independent contractor basis. So it's a blend of that, but if you're paying somebody, a federal contract worker who you just pay on an hourly basis independently, then that's the minimum number there. And if you do have independent contract workers that you pay basically as a 1099, those are typically not done by the hour, or it's a different type of arrangement. So what we're talking about is the federal contractors, and you pay them in the same format. So it's both. Good. All right, so let's go to our cons. So you might see an increasing cost of goods. So the prices may go up if people are compensating for the hourly wage in their products and services. So we may see a little bit of a boost there, but we're going to talk about that in just a bit, about passing on the cost and what that could look like. So that could be a negative there. Now, this is interesting because I said we may have more jobs available, but the same flip side of that coin is a stalled job market where people are afraid to hire. And what happens here is it's basically, and again, this is based on historic data that we see, where people are afraid to add the positions because they don't know what the impact is going to be. So they may be a little bit, gun shy, so to speak, to continue adding on their positions until they know how the wage adjustment will impact them. So some companies may do an actual hiring freeze. And we're going to talk about that too, because you may not feel the need to do that once you understand the numbers and the math behind it. So, but that we do historically see that when there is a wage increase coming, people do a hiring freeze to prepare. More outsourcing of employees, so saving on some of the overhead costs of actually hiring employees. You might just see people outsourcing for specific projects or tasks and getting things completed and then being finished with that block of work instead of hiring new employees. So these are some of the things that we have seen historically when there's a wage increase.
Also outsourcing your payroll, your human resources.
We're going to get to that. That's not a con. Okay. So we good so far? Pros and cons? Make sense? So this is really the interesting piece, some additional benefits that are actually byproducts of the wage increase. So separate from the pros and cons list, but extra things that happen. And, when we see a wage increase across the board, we're not talking about, one company's differences or whatnot. We're talking about these are kind of benefits and byproducts by individual employee. And it has a big impact on your organization. So some really interesting things that happen. First of all, job satisfaction. So now you've got this higher level of collaboration and creativity. You've got communication that is increased. You've got people who are happy in their jobs because they're making the amount of money that they feel makes sense for them, and they've got more money coming in so that they are more invested in their job and they are happier in their job. And so you've got all these other things, the creativity, the collaboration and communication. And then when people are satisfied in their jobs, they don't leave. And so now you've got a reduced turnover number, a reduced turnover percentage, and that's where your biggest savings comes from. We're going to talk more about turnover, but anytime you can keep those employees, and that seems to be something that happens when we see a wage increases, people are much more satisfied in their current role, and they're not trying to go find something else for more money. So a really big plus when you can reduce turnover. And all of these kind of speak to that. So when we talk about loyalty, again, employees are satisfied with the pay numbers they have, and they appreciate that they're getting that as your employee. They have chosen to stay with you, and so that creates that loyalty piece. Again, taking those turnover numbers and reducing them, and that saves you a lot of money. Same lines, the motivation piece. This piece is really interesting because when employees feel that loyalty and that job satisfaction, there's a higher level of motivation to do well. So they're going to work harder. They're going to meet the expectations. They want to keep this job. And so they're going to work to keep the job. So a real increase in the motivation level and the enthusiasm level, really trying to meet the expectations and exceed the expectations and do a really good job, because now it's an important component for the individual and important for the individual to stay and be there. And then finally, one of the most interesting things is a big difference in performance. And what happens is oftentimes people have two jobs in order to make ends meet. So they are working full-time with you, X number of hours, and then they have 3 days a week part-time somewhere else, or in the evenings, or vice versa. Maybe they want to work full-time in the evenings and they have a job that they do in the daytime part-time. And now they've got all of the financial piece met with one job. And so they may eliminate that second job, and now they've got more focus. They get more sleep. They are more vivid, and they can really perform better. And so the people who choose you over that second job very deliberately did that. And again, that speaks to the loyalty and the job satisfaction. And so they are going to have more time in their life to not only perform better for you while they're with you, but spend time with their families or what they really want to do. So this individual is really going to be a much better employee in terms of performance and meeting the expectations and having motivation and collaboration, creativity. All of these things improve. And again, these are byproducts from the changes that are coming. Does all that make sense? Yeah.
It does make sense. And I would also think that by increasing your salary ranges for your positions, you're going to be able to hire a better quality person. So you're actually, the performance, motivation, loyalty, job satisfaction, they're going to be able to do more, and they're going to be able to, you can empower those folks a little bit more. So I just think you're going to get a better quality person by elevating all your job category salary ranges.
Such a good point. Thanks, Cindy. Okay, so what we've done is we've put together some steps for you to go through that will help you prepare for this. And regardless of your state, regardless of your numbers or changes, if you go through these steps, even if you are in a state where you don't have an increase on the way just yet, we recommend you go through these steps anyway, because you might find some extra savings. You might find some extra dollars or trading some dollars that make a lot of sense for you. So let's take a look. So the first step is figure out what you are looking at in the first place. So go prepare a budget for the increase. And that means you need to go and see what you have. What is the increase actually going to mean for you? Make sure you know how it's going to look for you. Okay, so how do you do that? You want to analyze your existing wages, create a list of exactly who is below that minimum number, what is their title, what is their job description, and then take a close look at who is between that person and, you know, the next few levels. So if your entry level starting person is currently at $9, well, who's at $9.50 and who's at $10? You really need to take a look at these other levels too, and kind of make a list. Maybe you create it from hourly rates low to high, and then do the job titles next to each one, and categorize each of those in terms of layers: entry level, shift leaders, managers. Whatever you do, create kind of some layers that help you understand what you're looking at, and then do the math. Where are you off, right? The dollar amount per difference, or per dollar amount per hour difference in terms of, you know, change or dollars, whatever it is, next to it. So you can start to get an accumulation of these numbers, and it really will help you understand, you know, what are you looking at? So think in terms of the ripple effect. You know, you drop a stone into a lake and you see those ripples move out from there. And when we have a wage increase, we see two different types of ripple effects occur. And Cindy mentioned something earlier, and we're going to touch on that, about some people who have actually changed their rates already. And so what happens, the first ripple effect is within your organization. So you've got, just like I said, you've got the entry level people who you need to bump up to that $10 number, or 11, 12, so on. And then you have those other people who you need to bump up, your shift leaders, or whatever the manager levels are above in those ranges. And what we typically see, like that stone in the water, the ripples gradually dissipate until it's just not, you don't see the ripple anymore. So the same thing kind of occurs. We see the push on the wage bottom when you push that up, and then you do incremental increases. So you might see a jump from the $10 an hour, the next one might be $10.50. And then instead of going 50 more cents from there to 11, it'll be smaller. So maybe you go to $10.75 or $10.85. And then from there, you might go to $10.95. And so each of the differences in between wage jumps get smaller and smaller until right around middle management, it levels out. So just because there's a wage increase at the wage bottom doesn't mean everyone in your company has to have an increase. But you will need to take a close look at the ones that occur from the bottom in that push, if that makes sense. And then the second ripple effect we see is amongst competition. So we might see one organization who jumps directly to $15, or somebody who may have had higher hourly wages to have a competitive edge against somebody else. And so there's kind of a ripple effect with those as well. So in order to keep that competitive edge, some other people may go to those higher numbers. And so that's another ripple effect that we see. So internally within your organization, and then externally with business to business. Take a look at your expenses. Audit your expenses. Audit all of your expenses. So take a look at every single place where you have dollars going out. And what we want to do is find the dollars. You don't need to have an impact to this wage increase that changes your bottom line. So let's go see what we can find. Make a list of any place where you might be able to trade some dollars. Technology is huge. If you can add technology anywhere that streamlines a process, you want to make sure you do add that in. No matter what it is, any place that you can add something like that to save time, energy, that will save you money. Same thing. So what you want to do in the beginning, you made a list of what it's going to look like for you in terms of a financial impact. So now what you want to do is go find that amount in your expenses and see if you can trade out the dollars without making other changes. And like Cindy mentioned, outsourcing administrative functions can be a huge cost saving. So take a look at that. Can you outsource your payroll, your HR functions, your accounting functions, your IT functions? Is there a place internally where you can trade some dollars that will save you time, save you money, save you energy, resources, and you can trade those dollars there. And you might even find excess. So if you can trade some of these, then you can really come out ahead, and now you're not changing your pricing for cost of goods or services. And then if you did, now it's a plus. So now you can really make some big differences there. And, you know, certainly this coffee break is meant to be informational, but, you know, this is what we do. So if you wanted to look at your outsourcing functions in terms of payroll and HR, hashtag CertiPay, we are right here for you. And so the turnover number, when I talked about it before, and you guys have all heard me talk about how expensive turnover is, it's huge. This number, if you can reduce your turnover numbers, you're going to save yourself thousands, tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on your employee count. But this is a place where you want to be very careful not to have money going out the door. So make sure you know what your turnover numbers are. If you've got a high turnover, and anything above 20% should be addressed. So take a look at your turnover, figure it out, calculate out how much turnover do you have, and then why are people leaving, why are people staying? And then keep those good people in your organization, and that will save you so much money. So if you just reduce your turnover by one employee, you could potentially make up the difference for all of these wage changes. So be mindful of turnover and the impact it can have. And pay attention, do whatever you can to find the good people and keep the good people. And that will be make a big difference for you. Again, this applies to everybody with or without a wage increase. And I love the numbers on this. When you go through the numbers and you start with an understanding of where you need to be, and then take a look at what you have, it will be clear what you can do. Okay, now we roll up our sleeves. Step 3 is the point where you're gonna really dig in and get the information and know who and how much, and really take a look at what's going on. So look through your job descriptions, but not just your job descriptions. We really think of each job in terms of 3 components. So analyze the job function. So what has to happen in this job in order for your business to succeed? And really look at the job analysis. And then you're looking at the individual tasks and the job description that have to be completed by the employee. And then most significantly, do an evaluation of that job. What is the value of that job to your organization? And take a look at all 3 of these components. And so what you may be looking at here is, you know, do you have 3 jobs that are similar with a few variations, and can you combine them into 2? Does that make sense? Is that possible? Do you have jobs that you need to split apart in order to be more efficient and create the correct value? So make sure you understand all 3 layers of the jobs that you have in terms of value and analysis and description, and make sure that it's aligned with your business goals. And so now you've got all the information, you know what your changes are going to be, you know who it impacts and what that's going to look like. Don't just make the change in your system or on paper and move forward. Notify the employees, give them a call, get them in for a meeting and have the conversation. Explain it to them, let them know exactly what the change is, what it looks like for them, and give them an opportunity to ask questions or have the dialogue. It's an important piece of this when we talk about those byproducts where you're really developing that employee who is going to stay and be a significant part of your organization. So take that opportunity to really have the communication with them. And then your paperwork piece or your change trail. So hopefully all of this is electronic by now, but fill out those forms, the personal action notice or change forms, whatever they are, and get those signatures required and get that processed in your payroll. Again, hopefully these are electronic processes by now in 2021. If they're not, hashtag CertiPay. And so then update any wage increase scale that you had. We talk about that ripple effect and what does it look like for those other positions. And if you've got a transparent organization where your wage scale is on a timeline or by tasks or whatever it is, just make sure you go and update those documents as well. And finally, the overtime piece. This is another place where you really want to manage this process. So the overtime is a place where there can be a lot of money going out the door that you're not prepared for or you're not counting on or calculating. So it is very important to be mindful of this piece and don't allow overtime. You really want to manage that and control that. So here's where, in the beginning, when you went through and you made your list, one of the things you want to include in that is the amount of hours it takes to do the tasks that people do. And so if you have, X number of people in your department and they typically work X number of hours and have a certain amount of overtime on a weekly basis, that's what you want to address. You want to go figure out a plan so that you can eliminate that overtime. And so we're not saying don't pay overtime if it's not approved. The way it works is you have to pay overtime if individuals work over a certain amount of hours. So typically it's over 40 hours in a week and it's paid at time and a half. Some states have other specific requirements. California overtime is over 8 hours in a day, and they have double time over 12, and seventh day is double time. So make sure you know your state's overtime requirements. Typically over 40 in a week is time and a half overtime. So if an individual does work that with or without approval, you have to pay it. But what you can do is address it in terms of a disciplinary discussion. So if typically the policy is you want to avoid overtime, then make sure your employees are aware that they need to notify you when they're approaching that 40 mark, or create schedules that are very specifically 32 hours or 36 hours or less than 40. Or if the schedule is exactly 40 hours, make sure that people stick to that timeline. Again, you have to pay it if they do go over, but you can control it by making sure people are finishing their tasks timely, or if you need to make changes. Maybe there's a reason they can't complete things in a certain number of hours. Take a look at all the pieces connected to that. And I wanted to just show you some math on this. So let's say one employee works 50 hours at the new $10 an hour rate. So you've got 40 hours at the regular rate is 400, and then 10 hours at the overtime rate, which is time and a half, so 150. So now let's compare that to two employees work 25 hours each in that week. So now we're at $500. And so you can see where I'm going. Now you have paid the difference there in the hours of $50 of overtime dollars, and that's one person in 1 week. Now let's say that happens with 10 different people. That's $500 of that little difference in 1 week. That's $26,000 of overtime dollars at the end of the year. Now let's take the same scenario and do that with $15 an hour. Our number at the end of the year is nearly $40,000. So overtime is an issue if you don't manage it. And even those little bits make a big difference. So now you've got your overtime under control, and you make your lists and keep a close tabs on everything. So now just a few more things. Step 4 is the last kind of stragglers. I put them all in step 4, the things you want to just take care of, mostly housekeeping kinds of things. But there will be a new poster available from Florida Wage and Hour for any state. And again, we anticipate some federal changes on minimum wage across the board over the course of the next couple of years. So keep your eyes out for new posters. And with the Wage and Hour poster, you don't need to pay for this or do a fancy poster subscription or whatnot. These are all available online for free. You can just go into the Department of Labor, Wage and Hour, or Florida's main site and download the paper that has the information, and they'll have the hourly rate and the timeline and the changes. So something you want to just make sure you have available for your employees to see. Update any active job postings that you have. Make sure it's got current information if you made changes to the job description or changes to the starting rate and whatnot. And then update your work comp information. So you might have a light duty component. You want to make sure that you have changes to that language in there. And any work comp rate information that you need to update. And then finally, take a look at your insurance amount. So if you pay short-term or long-term disability, if you have an AD&D policy, take a look at some of those insurance amounts. You might need to make some adjustments based on the minimum wage. So that's our 4-step plan. And how are we doing? Any questions?
I don't have any questions. I just had a comment from JD, so I can read that if you'd like.
Sure.
It says, these are such important points, but to listen to certain parties, you would think a living wage is going to bring on a Great Depression. What do you say to those who are difficult to convince that people should be able to live decently from a single salary? Most of these folks who are so adamantly against raising the minimum wage don't seem to have any experience with this kind of wage.
I love this point, JD. I've already had people, approach me with that kind of viewpoint. And number one, I would say send them the link to this coffee break once we get it up on our site. And number two, now that you had an opportunity to hear some of the benefits and byproducts and the pros, share those with them. Say, listen, historically, we see huge benefits and pros across the board. It's not all bad. And the information that we see when we see a wage increase is really positive. We see some exciting increases. We see a stimulus to the economy. We see more purchasing. We see people spending the money. And so, it's kind of a reverse of what they think is going to happen. They think it's going to be all bad when really it's a boost. You're putting extra money into people's pockets. They're going to go buy more stuff. And then your business is going to do better and you're going to need more employees. And then, it's such a positive reaction. It's scary. And immediately you think, oh my gosh, where am I going to get this money? But go back through these steps. The money's there. Reduce your turnover, do some outsourcing, make some other changes, and then really feel good about it. believe in this process and believe in your employees and believe in your business and your numbers. And you can see how these positive impacts are right around the corner. So I would just spin it. I would say, it can be really scary, and you think that if nothing changes and you just have to add a bunch of wages to what you have to pay out, yeah, that would be scary, but that's not the real picture. So there is way more to it that has some real positive outcomes. And I love that comment. Thank you for bringing that up.
That was all I had, Rachel.
Very good. And, guys, it isn't all bad. It's really potentially a huge economy simulator and an exciting time. So I would say, go back through your own information and take a look at how you want it to look for you, and do it now. 3 months does go pretty fast. Get ready. And we're here if you need us. Get help on this. There's a lot of pieces we can help you with, in terms of the job analysis pieces and helping look at those numbers and see where can you trade out some of those dollars so that for you, maybe you don't have to increase rates for goods or services. Maybe you can really trade them out and then come out of this on top. Or maybe even the rate increases are so small, instead of charging $12 for a hamburger, you can charge $12.20, and nobody would even really notice the difference on the lunch menu. So, these are things that if you go through this information and these steps, you will have all the information in order to prepare for this and really come out on top. All right, guys, as always, thank you so much for joining us on these coffee breaks. We love having you. And CertiPay is here for you. We appreciate you, and we look forward to seeing you on the next coffee break. Have a great day, everybody.